Have you ever wondered why adverse reactions to all shots called vaccines are similar, regardless of what the vaccine supposedly is targeting and regardless of what gets injected? Well, I talked with Marc Girardot, author of the book titled The Needle's Secret, and he just may have the answer. It all boils down to the physics of the injected liquid mass called a bolus, how it always gets into the vascular system, and the immune reaction to that. The Needle's Secret is available at Amazon.com. His book not only describes the mechanisms of harm, but gives us hope and solutions. Here is just a few minutes from our 2-hour discussion.
A bolus it's a medical term. It's actually a way to deliver a product. It could be anything. You inject a bolus when you want to deliver to a certain organ or a certain location a high density or high concentration of a product. It's intended to bypass um, the vasculature's natural tendency to disseminate and to divide poison. If you're trying to deliver a high concentration dose of something quickly, let's say to the heart, and you start eating it, or you start doing a drip by drip saline bag, it's not going to work. So it's really well known for certain types of medication and drugs and agents as a way to deliver a product in high concentration, so that the exposure of the capillaries and the vessels walls is extremely concentrated at the moment it reaches that place. You have extremely fast boluses. You have boluses that are a bit longer, but it's fundamentally the idea that it's not going to trickle over days or tens of hours, but more likely within an hour or two, or it's going to go quickly through the vascular system. It's not something I've invented. People have known about that risk for a very long time. I think that the real problem has been that the medical establishment has been trying to downplay that risk and overemphasize the benefits of the vaccines. And while downplaying the risk over the years, they recently had got rid of the aspiration technique, which was useful in the rare event that you're actually inserted, but is completely useless in all the other cases. And what I've discovered in the past actually 2 years is that every single intramuscular injection goes intravascular with random speeds, random concentrations, and random destinations. And that's a very, very big deal. You can have two people taking the same vials, okay, and they get an injection, and one is fine and the other isn't. Okay, so you get the same product, you don't get the same experience, right? Some people say, "Oh, yeah, it's a question of everybody is different." Vaccines are actually leveraging uh, immunological platforms that are common. What is different is the experience and the way the, the the product is delivered. So that's one thing. There are two differences, two different experiences, and of course, the people who get harmed say, "I got poisoned," and the people who didn't say, "No, I took the shot. I'm fine. You're a liar." Okay, it's that dichotomy of experience that explains that. So that's the first point. You need to understand that. The second point, which is extremely important, is the fact that every single vaccines actually causes the same adverse events. So you can have MMR vaccines, hepatitis B vaccines, HPV vaccines, mRNA vaccines, etc. When you actually go and look for the adverse reactions, right? The ones that surfaced up, you're going to find the same problem. You're going to have thrombosis. You're going to have arteriosclerosis. You're going to have purpuras. You're going to have um, leaky gut. You name it. I mean, it's so. How is it that with different vaccine techniques, with a attenuated virus vaccine or inactivated virus vaccines or virus-like vaccine or an mRNA vaccine, targeting different uh, illnesses, very different illnesses, you end up in the same place. That's fundamental to understand. What's common? Well, what's common is the delivery and the immune reaction. Harm is all about scale and sensitivity, or you don't want to kill cells in the heart or in the brain because it's more sensitive than fat cells or muscle cells. You insert the needle, it's going to cut through severe capillaries, veins, arteries, a bunch of them. There's no other solution because the muscles are extremely vascularized. You're going to inject at various speeds, but as you're saying, sometimes very quickly, a dose of a liquid, the vaccine, that is going to expand into that sealed environment, which is the muscle. Then the pressure, the extra pressure is actually fairly high. And it's much higher than the pressure in our blood vessels. So as we know from physics, the liquid is going to leak directly into the area where there's least pressure. Depending on how close that the biggest vessel is to the tip of the needle, you're going to have a huge bolus, short bolus, or longer bolus. What it's going to do, it's going to be carried by the vena cava to the heart. And while this is happening, the NLPs, the vaccine particles, are going to lose their coating. They have a coating to avoid that they aggregate into a blob of fat, if you will. During that first journey, until the peg is eroded, the NLPs are inactivated. They cannot penetrate to other cells. And so a large part of the dose is activated when it gets to the left chambers, the atrium and the ventricle, the left ventricle. Actually, there's a study recently that showed from two scientists in Japan that showed that the left ventricle was hit more, and they had basically a sieve-like pattern, exactly the same thing that I described in my book, and my book was written almost a year and a half ago now. So the activation happens there. If ever it hits the inside of the heart, it's going to harm the heart, potentially carpet bombing the walls, then going down the aorta, and then streaming down as a vortex down your large arteries to the organs. When it gets to the organs and systems, the arteries become smaller arteries and then become capillaries. And as they're funneled through it, they're hitting the walls more often. And they're going to hit the walls in the capillaries. The lungs, the heart chambers are crossed 100% by 100% of the particles. Right. And part of that huge number, okay, we're talking tens of billions of toxic particles, cytotoxic particles, are going through that. And so it's going to create colossal damage, especially when it's extremely concentrated and the bolus is big. Why? Because it's going to expose the wall to a highly concentrated dose of the vaccine. And instead of having one one cell hit, all the cells are going to be hit.
Right.
And so when the T cells are going to be alerted, they're going to come in and they're basically going to destroy the entire lining. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the fundamental point, is concentrated endothelial damage, because we've never evolved for that. Anybody who has a scar, endothelium and epithelium is the same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
When we have a scar, we keep it for life, right? We know that's not supposed to happen. We have difficulties. Our bodies have extreme difficulties repairing that. And there's another problem, is we've never evolved for harm that is longitudinal, that basically is like 1,000 cuts on your artery. The bolus is going to go on a rampage, and it's going to start dissolving or fragmenting, as it dissolves and dilutes itself into the blood, and it's going to get to the capillaries, into the organs and the system. The problem is, because it's no longer a cross-sectional harm but a long wound, you don't have the production of the trigger for the dissolution.
Right.
Right. It's normally produced by the neighboring endothelial cells.
Mm-hmm.
It's called a plasmin activator. If you destroyed the entire length, there's no plasmin activator.
Gotcha.
Therefore, there's no dissolution.
Yeah.
And that means that you're going to be stuck with coagulation. You get white clots. That's a big problem, because if you have that in the capillaries or in the arteries, with time, they're going to get clogged, and it blocks the blood and necrotizes the tissue. We've seen examples recently of people dying, young people dying 3 years or 4 years down the road, which I believe are that. And that's really a very big deal, because we can fix that. But basically, I'm telling people, so look at nature and the way nature repairs. You first want to do the repair of the linings, of the endothelial linings. That works with endothelial stem cells circulating the body. It takes time, but it can be done, and it works really well. And only when that has been done, can you start taking out the Band-Aid, right?
Yeah.
Because if you take the Band-Aid and there's a hole behind, you're going to create an hemorrhage, right? So what people haven't realized is, when you get those vaccines, and the manufacturers and the public health authorities haven't been very upfront and clear about this, is they're injecting us with billions of particles that are going to trigger an immune reaction. That's the purpose of the vaccine. But they don't tell you that you're injected with 10 or 50 billion nanoparticles, that when they enter a cell, not only are they going to hack your cell and start producing a protein that's foreign to your body, but that cell is not going to be able to repair itself. It's going to flag that it's been contaminated on something called the MHCs. It's going to flag them, and our immune system is going to destroy that cell. There are other vaccines that don't do that, but also stress the cell so much that the cells will also, self-destroy. That's a very, very big deal. It explained a wide variety of illnesses that have kept scientists basically clueless for a very, very long time. The fact that you have capillary leakage, that the blood tissue barrier is gone in the brain, is going to create all the neurodegenerative diseases: Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Huntington's, MS, ALS. all of these illnesses are tied to, depending on where the leak is, you'll have one or the other. And what's really interesting um, is that you can cure that. We're bypassing nature. The fundamental of all this is
Right.
we are bypassing nature's protection. Full stop. We are injecting tens of billions of nanoparticles to our kids, nanoparticles that are cytotoxic by proxy, yeah, the T cell, but nonetheless, they're poison, and we're not calibrating it, we're not standardizing it, we don't know what concentration, what speed, and where it's going. It's lunacy. We're stupid, collectively stupid, and we're harming our children. We need to stop this now. I can't stop this alone. I have the info. The book is, I mean, I don't know anybody who read the book and said, Mark, you're full of shit. Okay? I don't know anybody. Everybody was like, yeah, it's compelling. The proof is in there. And since then, I've added more proof. We can stop this. I mean, I've been trying. I contacted Kennedy. I've contacted Jay Batashaya, whom I know and who knows about the bonus theory. I've contacted also Marty Makari, saying, guys, this is important. This isn't trivial. Okay, and I want to say something. Talking about toxicity without talking about dose is ridiculous. Okay, we've known that for 5,000 years. Okay, man has known that it's the dose that kills you. So how do you get a dose that's different within the same vial and the same dose? It's only a question, right? How do you do that? You need to change your paradigm of concentration. And that goes only through everything I've seen, observation, focalized transfection, all of that is tied to one idiotic mistake, which is we're using a 200-year-old delivery technique that is uncalibrated and that is not standardized, and we're playing Russian roulette with our loved one and our kids. The devil is in the detail, and this is a very important detail. Whenever you act millions of times, repeat a process millions of times, billions of times, it needs to be impeccable. If it's not impeccable, you have a disaster on your hands. And that's what we have because the process is not standardized, it's not calibrated, and we don't know what we're doing.